edition of Sophia's Emporium. This is a big story about the MKUltra Delta projects, so might want to give it an ear.
3, 4.
This is Off Planet Radio.
Yes, indeed it is. So I think, maybe often answered, actually. I don't know what we're going to call this, but we have... Hey everybody, welcome back to Off Planet Radio, Off Planet TV. I'm Randy Maugans. There's this cool thing. Jones, my father, and
The volume will come back.
Because I haven't done it for so long. Welcome back. Gosh, where to start? I've been gone all summer. And I'm told that I was missed. And
Yes.
I missed doing this. And two of my friends popped in. And we decided that we would sit down and just, we're going to explore probably some dark things, but there's light on the other side of the tunnel. And to my, let's see here, we got a perspective of the screen. To my upper left-hand corner is Suze B. Pratt, who did a broadcast from between the pixels in cyberspace and places you wouldn't expect and can pop up unexpectedly almost anywhere. She's literally a digital jack-in-the-box.
Tag it.
And on the bottom screen is Medicine Bear Whitebow, who is the founder and proprietor of the Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge. And he is also going to talk about his background, which includes it's pretty terrible stuff related to MKUltra and mind control programs in the U.S. military intelligence industrial fucking complex that has been basically running this planet for 70 years. Oops, Bear disappeared there. And
He's shy.
I don't think he's shy. All right, so there we go. So that's the rollout for today. I'm Randy Maugans, in case you didn't know that. I almost didn't myself. It's good to see me. And welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
I love your shirt selection today, Mr. Maugans.
Yes, thank you. It's very colorful.
Yes, it is. I'm the
Would
holistic
you tell our
stylist.
guests a little more about Medicine Bear before we get all into it with him?
Well, we've done a couple of shows with Bear before, so actually there's a whole dossier on file at Off Planet.
Good.
And it's sometimes better to allow him to tell us what he wants to say about himself, because he fulfills many roles, and the roles he fulfills now, and we won't talk about him in third person anymore.
All right.
Go ahead. I'm enjoying it.
He's constantly reinventing himself, but again, I stress the Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge because that's where he does his work in terms of the Sweat Lodge and the medicine, the healing work, and basically attempting to set up communities. And so that's kind of the synopsis on Bear. And Suze, you kind of have the agenda in terms of where we're going to guide this ship. So I'll let you kind of uncork the bottle.
All right.
Maybe the Venter.
Thank you, Randy.
Enter a fine wine.
Well, what I wanted to do was open it up with a prayer or a blessing. And for this transmission, I would like it to be able to free all of our minds, especially our viewing audience, because this is reality shattering, and we want to emphasize that Medicine Bear wants to focus on the healing. I was really impressed with something that he said, which is, you know, letting go of the past 25 years. I mean, you can go to any show on YouTube currently and hear that, but what Medicine Bear is going to do is reveal specific things to us that will confirm spirit, I believe. So, free people's minds, heal the heart, go back and get that inner child. Um, you know, we have to bring the inner child home so we enter the kingdom
Welcome,
as
Anna.
children. And while Medicine Bear talks about himself, I'm going to do a few things to sanctify our collective space, and I hope for a nice, clean transmission with no communication gaps. Medicine Bear.
Well, where do you want me to go first?
Well, I'd like to know how old you are because I was trying to life chart and timeline you yesterday, which is something I'm going to be focusing on. So if you don't mind, I'd like the year you were born, please.
67.
You're a baby. I was born in '64. God love you. But you know, 67 is a very powerful year as far as all these little hidden agendas go. And do you feel comfortable saying your birthday, or would you rather just identify by your astrological sign?
920.
Do you know your blood type?
O positive.
Mr. Maugans, what's the year of your birth, if you don't mind?
I do.
All right, forget it then. Who gives a
I'm
shit?
in the practice of lying about my age, or at least keeping people guessing. But I am a Taurus, and I am AB negative, so.
You're a Taurus and A, B negative. You know, I knew that we were negative blood kin. So, Medicine Bear, the reason I bring that up is because as we work through this process, I want to focus on your intentions. So, if we can all emulate what Rudolf Steiner knew as the radiant type, instead of dealing with our personality types or our ego, we all come into this place of unity because, like Randy knows, different blood types internalize or externalize their stress different ways. So, considering that you're an MK Ultra / Delta, you know, someone that had to serve through taking out dirty deed people. Some people get tripped out on that other word, assassin, kind of like people get tripped out that some people were calling me an artificial intelligence. So it's kind of tough to define terms at this point, but I'm fascinated with your background that you were raised in this black magic kind of a thing, and say like my mom, I mean, she didn't love anybody and she definitely practiced the dark arts, so I feel like we have that in common. I'd like to hear a little about that.
Well, I was adopted at birth, and the family that adopted me, the main reason why they took me in was bloodline relation, which in my particular case happens to be twofold: Native American, and if you go back far enough, Druidic, Celtic, if it's easier for some people. Very Luciferian oriented family. Brought up with, trained with, to use the darker sides of things for purposes that were less than pleasant, and ultimately served other people's needs and wants and desires. And groomed from an early age to ultimately wind up serving 20 plus years working for the government, and winding up in ultimately, which started out with Project Talent, moved into a sub-project under the Phoenix Project, which was MK Delta, and that takes up a good 20 plus years of my life and what I was doing.
So,
An ultimate.
go ahead.
Good.
Well, I was just gonna say, so if you were born in '67 and you've been speaking out loud since 2013, is that what you said the other night?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at your ages, and what I was gonna ask you was, you began your service with the government out of high school, or did you do the college thing, or
Graduated high school, and 2 weeks later I was gone.
bless your
And,
heart? Did you do it for the free education?
um, looking back on it, there's still some fragmented memories that
Trying to
I
get
don't know
my
which ones were
tripod right for you guys.
but yeah, it was groomed. It was actually at the last minute. I was I was originally being groomed to go into the United States Navy specifically, and I chose on my own. Got to the recruiting office, Army, Marine, Navy, Coast Guard. Went right into the Army recruiter's office and pissed off the family that I was raised with, and that's where I deviated a little bit. Unfortunately for me, I think what I was trying to do is to be a little bit more in touch with my core personality. My programming didn't take entirely. Looking back on it, it took enough that I was damaged goods and lost, and this gave me a sense of purpose and a direction to go into, and like everything that comes with the whole MK background, there was no half measures. It was once the decision was made, it was both feet in and head first, close the eyes, jump in, and gas for air when I got a chance.
But I think that is the only way to really take it. And I know in my experience, all of those situations that I had dealt with quietly in my childhood, as I entered my adult years and was running my own business and doing these things, I knew that thing was instilled, but it motivated me. It motivated me to survive. It motivated me to work hard. It motivated me to find some beauty in the world. And that must have happened in your experience somewhere.
I did have one experience at the age of 6 where I was introduced to a medicine man who basically read me my life. He told me what I was here to do and what my purpose was, and it terrified the you know what out of me, and I ran. I wasn't ready to deal with it. Looking back on it, had I been willing to jump into it, go be with him, I might, and I'm stressing might, have been able to avoid some of what ultimately wound up taking place. But that was not the path that I was apparently supposed to take, and I'm at the point now where I think that we go through happens for a reason, and there's a purpose behind it, and there's logical reasons for it happening, and it's something that's a process that our soul has to go through in order to get to where we're ultimately going. And I'm certainly nowhere near the end of that journey yet, and working towards I'm just focused on the journey, not really the destination.
Okay.
That makes
Well, it makes perfect sense, but you've given us a lot to work with, so I want to stop there and go over a few things. So, when you talk about project talent, the way that I know that to be, like in my mind, would be Joe. Now, he was a semi-pro athlete, and his dad ran the secret programs at Monsanto, and Joe was a model where they'd put the baseball uniforms on him and he'd do the J.C. Penney and Rawling thing. So to me, that's project talent. Like if you excel in sports, or you're super cute, or you're athletic, or you're ass kicking. That to me is what it is. I was never a project talent kid. I was one of them ones they did the dadgum experiments on.
Well, I've got a hodgepodge of, I mean, I'm not quite sure that they were. I had apparently several types of niches that I could fit into.
Name them.
I as well at one point did, and I've not talked about this before, but I did do the catalog modeling thing
See?
at an early age. I did do that. The earliest recollection I have is being in a room with several of the children in the old style desks, having a 3D puzzle put in front of me and having it disassembled and then told basically put it together. And apparently what it was an aptitude test to see where I was most apt to go and be fitting into certain things. Now the modeling thing and the Monarch programming was not really something that suited. I could put on that set of clothing and wear it, but it wasn't comfortable, and ultimately was not where I was most effective. Where I wound up being most effective happens to be in the areas of remote viewing, mental telepathy, that and the stuff that most people consider to be outlandish and fantasy and unrealistic.
Can we call it
So-
supernatural or super sensible? Is that all right with you?
That's fine. And from there, I had an aptitude for weapons, and I had an aptitude for hand-to-hand interaction. So spent some time doing martial arts. I spent extensive time working with weapons. I was 7 years old when I first learned how to take apart and assemble a Colt 1911 along with an M1 Garand. Those were the two first weapons I ever was exposed to.
Impressive. Impressive.
And from there, the route that I got ultimately put into, I honest to God to this date don't know what happened to any of those other children. I really don't. I don't know if any of them survived. I don't know how many of them survived. I know there was a pretty high ratio of kids that would be there, and then the next week they wouldn't be there. They'd be gone. A lot of the.
Was there a core age that you noticed those kids were not there?
Probably between the ages of 7 and 8.
Thank you. Now let me ask you something, Medicine Bear, because this pisses me off all day long. And after can I shorten it up? All right, Bear. Well, you know, I mean, that's like somebody calling me Sue. It makes me go like this, you know, so I don't ever know. But seriously, I'd like to make this statement, have your response, and then hand it over to Randy for his commentary. Okay? Here's what pisses me off. Everybody talky about knowing yourself. And then somebody that's all talented like yourself has just proven to me on this paper that you do know yourself. Alright, so here you are telling everybody that you know yourself. And they're going, you don't know everything yet. Well, nobody said you knew everything. But damn it, if we don't acknowledge the things that we do know, the magic doesn't work. And so, if we have to talk on supernatural and super sensible terms, I just thought that would be something I would bring up and pass the floor to you.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't know what else I could fill in with that, with what you've already said.
Good. Randy.
Okay, so first off, can I request that we kill that music in the background?
Absolutely. Anything you want.
Thanks. Just because I think where we're headed here, that music's a little triggering. Couple of things.
Yes.
Based on what I learned, what I know, what I remember, Project Talent was really an umbrella project. It has a public profile. You can go look at projecttalent.org, I think, to this day. And what it will tell you is that it was a program designed to choose the best and brightest of American high school students between the years 1964 to sometime in the 70s. Don't quote me on that because I'm citing this from memory. The explanation that they give there is a surface level explanation of a project that was a public side of the project that we know as Project Talent. This was when they were doing longitudinal studies on students, doing testing, not just IQ testing, but across a very wide spectrum of tests. I remember a lot of these tests. Some of them, when you think back on them, don't make sense. Some of them, as I discussed in a show that Emily and I did with Amy Bashago, I actually encountered a device that would not have made sense in the time in which the tests occurred, which was in the mid-1960s. And that device would not show up on our landscape in any form at all until the 1990s, because it was a flat screen device with a very high speed, rapid array of video type projection systems. In other words, it was a multi-projection system. And I've never seen any type of device like it since, but the technology behind it, as I remember it, would have been at least liquid crystal displays, flat displays, and something that was capable of projecting images without using film or analog media, because there was no film. And the images were projected at extremely high speeds deliberately. There was both a hypnosis aspect and what I now understand to be a mnemonic program, that's memory, where we were then tested on what was shot at us at high speeds interpreting images. And some of the images themselves were extremely occult. Some of them were symbolisms, sigils, designs that, again, if you showed these to a child, it's like a Rorschach test on probably a psychic level. In addition to that, there was testing for psychic abilities. And the IQ testing was far more extensive than anything that was given to the general body of students. So what Project Talent was doing was it was a sorting and culling device to then shift people into various programs. You know, the most famous being MKUltra. Bears talked about MKDelta. Another project that is of special interest to me would be, I guess, the Monarch programs, and a program operated out of Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland, which basically was an experiment in electronic, electrical, and chemical brain alteration. So all the MK projects, as Bears pointed out, were sub-projects that came in under an umbrella program that was being run through the public schools, but it goes back further than this, from what I'm able to gather now. And some of what I've remembered and some of what I've learned has now been augmented by live witnesses, people who have come back into my life, including one person who I have not seen since I was in 5th grade, who was basically a guy I grew up with. And when he contacted me, he asked me a couple of very interesting questions. um, about our IQ tests and exactly what the numbers were on those at the time. And we all tested above 170 on the IQs. He also asked me about MKUltra, and he also began to talk about memories of bases, specifically bases hidden inside of mountains. So I have to conclude that these projects were probably initiated much earlier than the 1960s, the 1970s, they go back to the 1940s. And what they had done, based on personnel records of servicemen from World War II forward, was they began profiling. Remember that in the 1950s, we had the nuclear family. We had the ability at that time to begin profiling families based on their backgrounds. And the military itself would have had records, and in fact, in some cases, would have had live records of entire families because many of the servicemen themselves stayed active duty after their initial 4-year stint in either one of the theaters of war in World War II or Korea, and even going forward into Vietnam. So the military was the kernel from which they began to put off the data that was used to aggregate into things like Project Talent. And then Project Talent itself was a net that was cast over the general population to capture people of interest with talents of interest. And I can go back further, but I want to leave that because I would like, Bear, I'd like you to comment on what I just put out there.
Is there an area in that you want me to touch on specifically?
No, just the general narrative, if that jives with what you understand.
That goes right along with a lot of things. Now, as far as you're talking about bases in mountains, I've got recollection of specifically Southern California off the coast, and there's a very famous little community island that's out there that I spent several summers at, and remember being on the backside. And now I have not dived into the specifics of that time period specifically because I'm not able to quite make sense of it yet. Brother that we both know that is currently incognito and being silent for various reasons of staying secure and safe. We haven't had a chance to really discuss any of that. But I think some of it, what vibes for me is a correlation with a little bit, to some degree, of what Bashago has talked about and put out, jump stations to off planet and things of this nature. How much of that, for myself personally, I can put my finger on? Very little at this point. But it does resonate very strongly. And we know from other individuals, Philip Snyder being one of them, that was a geologist who did a lot of extensive work on putting together several plumes, and that's all been verified and everything like that. Yeah, so for me, it rings very true that there's something very real there. Now, the extent of it and exactly, and like I said, in my particular case, what was I exposed to? What was I being used for? What was my purpose in actually being there? What was I actually doing? What did I, and where did it lead? I haven't gotten a lot of specifics. That area is still very fragmented for me. So I'm not really want to discuss too much about it because I don't want to put out wrong information that I have to later on go back. You know what? I apologize. This is what I said, but it turns out that what I said isn't the case, and I now know that this was the case. So I'd like to try and be as pure and true to what the story is as best as I know it currently. And as things unfold and more things get revealed and that onion starts to get peeled more, I'm sure that down the road there'll be an opportunity for a discussion specific on things of that nature that you were just discussing, and probably be a very enlightening show, not just for listeners but also for those of us that actually experienced it,
Right.
and being able to put all those fragmented pieces together and have a mosaic of an entire picture to look at that gives a wide window of truth versus just a little small window of it.
Right. And that's
So
exactly
what I basically put forward there is based on memories, research, and unsolicited corroboration of things that I experienced as a kid. And this is, I'm talking within this literal physical year, this has come up. I wasn't looking for it. And so I don't make a lot of claims about anything that what I suspect and what I think are entirely different matters that lies in speculation. But I think by putting our data points out there, we open the window for other people to come in and also fill in some of the dots because of the way they handled the programming and the fact that it's obviously a considerable amount of wiping that has occurred in memories, and the fact that human memory is rather fragile at best anyway. But I think when you go back to the narratives of even what, you know, people like Duncan and Finian put out, we have a pretty strong picture of what these projects look like. And you know, from Duncan's standpoint, it's very compelling because of the fact that, you know, through a series of incidents and accidents, he actually did begin to regain and reintegrate odors and memories. So from the standpoint of what you were talking about earlier, I'll move to the theoretical side of something, and I put this out before, that I'm much more strongly leaning towards the fact that we talked about coming in knowing who we are, remembering who we are. Each one of us has a strong sense of mission. Most people in this world do not have a strong sense of mission, by the way.
Oh, I know.
The average person on the street is simply an animation figure in a running cartoon comic strip for the most part. They eat, they sleep, they work, they drink, they laugh, they have sex, they have all of the things that go on in their life, but they do not have a strong sense of mission. What's stunning to me in interviewing people who have come out of projects, people who come from the paranormal, people who come from the esoteric and the occult side, is that they do have a strong sense of mission, which to me kind of points to the fact that we were profiled and targeted pre-life, and that basically they knew where the light shone in the beings who were in the process of incarnating into this present age. Because this age, right here, right now, where we sit today, tonight, tomorrow, we're on the nexus of the whole thing. I mean, this is it, folks. Don't sit around waiting for the Big Bang or something because you're in it. This is the deep side of what's going on in the beginning of an age, in the end of another age. So I'll just throw that out, and here we are.
Well, here's what I'd like to add then to this segment. Maybe the reason why they didn't know I was a genius, you know, or that I had these special skills, is if you go back to St. Louis and in its home of the MKUltra projects, I mean, in 5th grade in 1974, we were dealing with desegregation. We were one of the first 3 communities that were desegregated in St. Louis County. So when I look at my reality, for example, when I talk about medical experiments, I mean, if you consider that I had 2nd and 3rd degree burns on this whole area of my face and my head, and my face isn't scarred and I haven't had plastic surgery, you know, somebody did something really special that I wouldn't look like a burn victim there, but of course leave me with the trait here. Do you see what I mean? And they like to give you scars that most people would never see and they think you would never speak of. But in the meantime, I gotta tell you this, Medicine or Bear, because a million years ago when Randy and I talked before, and I was telling him the story where I was almost shot at Scott Air Force Base. My dad was a marksman and a policeman. He was assistant chief of police when he retired. But maybe that was when I got taken to wherever they took me, whether it's a ship in the air or a deal underground. Sure as shit, it was Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, and it has to do with a large field of tall grass. So at that age, I was about chest high in this grass. And when I came out of the grass, where I was behind the berm, where the targets would line up. And then when they went to crank the targets, you know, the ready on the right, ready on the left, ready on the firing line, somebody screams, "There's a kid out there." And my dad comes and gets me. Now, the way I tell it in my never-ending story would be that Randy wouldn't want to hit me to any inside information he may or may not have, considering all these people that seem to know me from some mysterious ship that they talk about in 2010 as well. So I've had all these little, like, beautiful tidbits laid at my feet, and part of my job as a remote viewer is putting those pieces together and allowing them to work with me, because when I came online, I agreed full well that I would document my journey and that I knew that they would be watching me all the time and know everything about me and all my biorhythms and such. So that's my story.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. All right, so
What else?
let's
Where are we going next?
hey,
Be a navigator.
aren't we doing good on time, y'all?
Yeah, we're condensing. We're folding time.
Yes,
This is what
yes.
we do with time words.
I know this. So, okay, so I do have something that I'd like to read you guys about community. It'll be short and sweet. And this is out of Rudolf Steiner's book, Awakening to Community. And you know what gets me? Everybody wants to talk about Blavatsky, but nobody wants to talk about Steiner. So, him and I share a birthday, which is February the 25th. It says, in a child's early years, it is introduced into a human community that is absolutely real, concrete, and human. A community without which one could not exist. I am referring to the community of human speech. Speech is the form of community that we may say nature presents to our contemplation. Speech, and especially our mother tongue, is built into our whole being at a time when the child's etheric body is not yet born, and it's our first experience of the community building element. We can lay it to the rationalism of our age that though people nowadays have some feeling for languages and nationality and conceive folk groups in relation to the language they speak, they do so from the political agitation standpoint without paying any heed to deep and intimate understanding, soul configurations, to the tremendous aspects of destiny and karma attached to a language and to the spirit behind it, all of which are the real and intrinsic reasons why human beings cry out for community. What would become of us if we passed one another by without hearing resounding in the other words the same life of soul that we ourselves put into those same words when we use them? If everybody were to practice just a little bit of self-knowledge, we would be able to form an adequate picture, which I cannot take the time to develop now, of all we owe to the language as foundation of the first primitive building of community. And so what I want to say is, as we materialize your life chart there, I really do think that you'll have great strides in this because you're open and honest and you really do have a lot of data to work with. But see, what I'm talking about is what we all want to be is this radiant type. It's the ideal type. All soul functions in harmony, activity, passivity in harmony, inner and outer worlds in harmony. The virtue is sense of righteousness, and the corresponding negative attribute may be laggardness, which would be inertia. And it says development through realization that something of this radiant and harmonious element can be obtained by all six types when they succeed in overcoming the extremes of their one-sidedness through education and self-development. Historically, the radiant type was regarded as the harmonious combination of all of these types. Self-conscious, dominant, aggressive, aesthetic, mobile, and romantic. Most people are a combination of two of those soul types. And then over here we break into the age. So when you said that that person spoke to you at age 6, I believe that's why you weren't permanently fragmented, because you had that supernatural blessing at that key critical age, which would be the first cycle of 7. Alright. So, let's move on. We're going to lay the last 25 years to rest. What we the people can do now to transmutate and heal. So, I'd like, if you would, to explain about your medicine and how you feel about caretaking on your land, and what are your visions when it comes to self-sustaining and community and growing food.
Well, I've now carried the core vision I carried for going on 27 years, and that was from one of the times on the mountain going on Vision Quest and being gifted with this vision that's very, very long term, and it works out to be a community, not just myself, not just a small group of people, and not just one modality of teachings, but a eclectic group of teachings going on all together at once and pulling together, and people finding the similarities within each of the teachings and bringing those gaps together, and then unifying it in a practical, applicable way by which to grow and heal. And all of that encompasses taking care of first yourself, because you can't do anything for anybody else until you deal with your own inner stuff.
Isn't that the truth?
Then branching out to close-knit family, friends, ultimately your community, and then lastly, fulfilling the agreement to give back to what sustains us, which is Mother Earth, and all that dwells upon her. We're here to be the caretakers and the stewards, and not dominate, but to work in conjunction with being the protectors of the land, and making sure that the next generations that come after us, they get to have the same fields that we worked and be able to produce the food and be sustained. And it carries on and on and on, and it's never ending. So it's been a long journey to get that going. Now the next phase that I see it it's really starting to look like what's going to happen probably in the next 18 to 24 months is vacating Nevada and will take up residence in Randy's neck of the woods. We'll be down in Pennsylvania. And that's where I see the land with untainted water, resources, natural wildlife, and the ability to really truly connect on a day-to-day basis with nature and get reacquainted with that and integrate that back into our lives. This concrete jungle that we that we are all being inundated and pushed towards congregating to is detrimental in so many ways. The man-made is false from the reality that I look at, and we're starting to see what's the end result of this facade, this veil of BS that surrounds us on a day-to-day basis. And we've got the technology, we've got the machinery, we've got the pharmaceutical, we've got all of this man-made garbage, and we've gotten so far from our true selves and our true purposes that we are being, by design, herded like sheep into this little catacomb of stupidity. Here's my mind to put it. It's just stupid. I see no
Hey,
value.
it's like a bad
And-
script. It's just like
Yeah,
a bad, stupid script somebody wrote, and they keep plugging new shit in.
And there are days where it's just ultimately very frustrating, where I want to pull back, pull away completely, and wash my hands of it all. And and I refer to it as the Muggle syndrome, and I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be inundated with it any more than I absolutely have to. I could care less about who's in the White House. I could care less about political parties. I could care less about gender specifics and acknowledging 96 different genders and all these other goofy things that they've got put out there now. And all of it is by design to divide and conquer and putting us into this dystopian future that will be very beneficial and wonderful for this very small group of people that are up here, and everybody else will be down here in servitude. No free will, no free thinking. I don't want to be a part of that. I
No.
refuse. But also, I don't want to get angry and negative about it, and let that take hold and become the forefront. Ultimately, we have to find a way to navigate through this horror show that they presented us with now, in a way that is constructive and positive. And how do we do that? Well, one of the ways that we do that is like-minded people come together, we work together, we set aside our differences, whatever they may be, and we find common ground by which to band together and work together to have the world that we want versus the world that they are trying desperately to create. And as it's unfolding, we're to some degree we're watching the veil that they have had up for so long fall apart, and you can see them scrambling. All of it's just not working. So I still have, and that's what keeps me driving forward and motivated to keep doing what I'm doing. And is that I can see that glimmer of hope that there are people waking up. There are people that want more, that are questioning now, what is this and why are we doing this and why are we going along with it, and are finally starting to say, you know what, this doesn't suit my soul. And Unfortunately, we just have not quite reached the place yet where we are able to quite tip the scale in favor of humanity versus this dystopian, uh, Orwellian, nasty, vile, Luciferian garbage quite yet. Uh, then that's why I do the work that I do. It's like how do we reconnect? Well, we reconnect your soul, your higher self, your true self, your ending, and reconnect that to Mother Earth, and then let that umbilical cord branch out as vines of roots that reach out into your community and connects you to all things. Because ultimately we are connected. That's them, and what they are trying to perpetrate and bring forward is that we have all physics. It is so far from the truth.
Yes.
So
And
far.
and they did want to muffle your last several words, but let me take you into a speed fire round. So, when you deal with the super sensible and supernatural and esoteric, all these things, you can bring a subject up to somebody and they'll say whatever their belief is about that, but they don't know the background about it. So, just to bring up a few things, one of the people that really said it well was Walt Woods with the dowsing. And he's like, I can go in and clean up a water source, but if these bitches are gonna still piss in my Cheerios, I'm not going around everybody's state to do that. So, for example, if there was, surely a couple good dowsers in each state, they could work on the water, for example. And we know the whole water system has recently been intentionally poisoned. But I want to direct your attention to this book. And so this is Dr. C. Norman Shealy's book, Holy Water, Sacred Oil. And in this book, they go over a very simple machine that could be put together, that would be placed in running water in the streams, and it would transmute these toxins. Now, back in the 30s, California made a deal with Rockefeller that as long as he could make the water look clean, then they weren't going to say nothing about all the industrial waste that was already occurring in California at that time. So, in this book, what happens is it's a simple machine, and there's 4 scientists that work on it, and it has a secret set of switches that all 4 of them would have to engage. And you know that from warfare, or if you're working on some kind of deal, and your team all has a piece of that puzzle that comes together to create the initiative. That's the only reason these 4 scientists didn't die, is because when they were in the water and the gangsters came and said, give me your machine, well, they said, here you go, because Rockefeller didn't want to pay for it. But I have so much data, and so much of it is online, but I have no clue where it is. In the end, I think we could work with these concepts simply, and I wanted to hear your take on if you've had any experience with pendulum dowsing, what you might add to that, and what you know or what you've heard about biodynamic farming. That's a Steiner concept. And then I want to talk about orgone energy and crystal healing, combined with Mother Nature because I'll tell you what, I'm surrounded. And it really does keep the EMF bombardment off us. I know it does. So we're also wanting to talk about rain busting, like William Reich and the orgone energy, and what kind of magic we could create if we came together as a group with intent and did that. Because They used to do that shit. You can measure the difference. So, like, think back to that group of meditators, and it dropped the crime rate.
Well, the biodynamic farming, I've got a sister who is up to here with knowledge in that, and
Cool.
that is her forte, and it's
Awesome.
we've got a plan to work later on this coming year together in developing some courses and teachings over several weekends, and I'll provide the property for it, and she'll provide the teachings for it, and we'll see where that goes. And she's had a lot of uh, positive things happen as a result of it. Now, as far as my own personal knowledge into that, it's something I'm working with, but I don't have a
You're blessed with a
enough of.
teammate. You're blessed with a teammate. You have your focus. We're talking about your team. I love it.
And then, of course, for years working with crystals and working with our own chakras and all the systems that we have in place there, and working with some of the more esoteric things, bringing things into focus, and it's it all works in unison. You can't. All these parts have to work together. You can't just have one little section and expect that it's ultimately going to wash over this planet and cleanse, for instance, the toxins in the water and things of this nature. We have to pull all of these modalities together, pull all these tools together, and use them in conjunction. And the best way to do that is individually. We take our own experiences, we take our own knowledge, we take what we've learned, and we bind together with somebody else. Like in my case, working with somebody who's into the biodynamic farming. What can I contribute to that? What can she contribute to the medicine I carry? Okay, let's combine that together, and let's see how that unfolds and how that develops into something larger, and then keep adding to the mix to get the best end result for it. And like I said, that's where I'm starting to see things happen. That's where I think people like us, we come together and we bring our own individual teachings and what we've learned, we bring it together, and we develop together a system by which to share and teach with other people, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. We've got the momentum starting to build up, and that ball is starting to roll downhill, and as it does, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. My hope is that that process starts to speed up, so that we can, in a positive way, outdo and overrun what is taking place and has been taking place with the whole Luciferian thing and the Illuminati garbage and all of that, and basically put them out of business. And hopefully that can happen in a way that is positive and happens in a way that's constructive. But ultimately, unfortunately, the sad reality is that you've got people like the Rockefellers, you've got people like the Rothschilds that are unwilling, and their souls are so dark, they're incapable of diverting from the path that they're currently on, which that leaves them ultimately a very distasteful means by which to remove them. And I don't think I need to take that any darker than that. It's an unfortunate reality that we may be very well forced to contend with, and to some degree that hurts my soul. But it's also okay if it needs to be go down that road, then so be it.
Right. You know, I saw something that I thought was brilliant the other day. The live stream that you came in on began with a post about all the pedophiles and associates that have been rounded up, what countries they're from, and the number of rescued children. And Hyatt made a comment that, you know, hopefully we see these numbers keep elevating and building that momentum. And it was a spreadsheet. So if someone that was computer brilliant organized a spreadsheet that resembled what we saw on that live stream, it seems like we could plug those technologies in and maybe have a differentiation between what people consider to be free energy or free healing and stuff that costs money. So, for example, you don't need to spend $700 on Chris Keller's incredible professional size rings. You can get a set for $100 that are personal use. I do this as part of my healing work as a holistic stylist, but we already use shungite and crystals to transmute our water along with the Dr. Emoto water cards, and then it sits on an orgonite plate. But you can also set your pitcher of water on this ring, and I've also started doing it with my loaves of bread. You know, to just take the time to actually use the tools. And that's the hardest thing about this. Just like if you set up someone a lifestyle regime, to take the time to remember to take the supplements or to do the meditation or to walk through the process of whatever it is, any one of our global team is initiating. So, I mean, there's a million different ways, but there's ones that are free and there's ones that cost money. So, with that being said, I just want to read what you wrote to our viewing audience and then have Randy come back in and give his message. So, this is what you shared less than a day ago. And it said, our world is sick and it is suffering. Humanity is hanging by a thread. I am accountable. I am responsible. And I am taking action. Are you? Do you have what it takes to go the distance? Are you willing to be hated, mocked, ridiculed, to stand for what is right? I speak for the 7 generations that come. What path will we leave for them? What guidelines? I call upon all who can hear to stand up, heal yourself, your family, your communities, in whatever means you can. I offer what I carry as a guide, a roadmap, a starting place. Come to Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge. Become a member. See where your gifts can be used to aid self and others. From the bottom of his heart, he loves all y'all and would gladly give his life. He is a warrior. He is also Wakan. Is that the correct pronunciation?
It's close enough.
Alright. I am medicine, a holy man, a hollow bone of creator. I call upon you who can hear my voice. Aid me. Stand by me. Our mission is Wakan. Alright, Mr. Maugans.
Oh, I'm supposed to respond to all that somewhere. It's a lot. The elites right now are doing a pretty good job of imploding their own system. As you've seen, what's broken out here in my backyard over the recent exposure of 310 Catholic priests and thousands of children sacrificially defiled, sexually exploited, and deviant behavior on the part of people in very high places, going right up to the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and the late William Keeler, who was a cardinal appointed by Pope John Paul II. That's how deep this goes. The gravity of that, and I know this case is being discussed, but I don't think people understand the nexus of power and sexual exploitation that has been exposed with this case, and that this is simply the tip of an iceberg. I'm aware right now of at least 21 other sealed indictments across the United States that may result in over 1,000 perpetrators, some of whom occupy offices in religion, government, industry, being taken down. When your sacrificial child rape system, which is death of innocence, murder of souls, is finally curtailed and stopped, their power structure ends, because this is the satanic Luciferic system that has fed them for thousands of years. So I'm optimistic about that. Nevertheless, economically, sociologically, right now they are in the business of basically taking themselves down because their system cannot go any further. A lot of it is because of people like us who have just continued to push the argument. And the next level of this is going to be what happens when the exposure of all these dark things hits mass scale. More importantly, what's got to happen is that new leadership has to step into place, and it has to have very clean energy. It has to be of a moral caliber that is extremely high. That means that those of us who have been in the trenches for a long time are being subjected to, let's just say, the shadow work, the purging, the clearing the scales off of our own eyes and what's been occurring. For me, on a personal level, it's the only thing I can talk about right now. It's the depth of pain there is involved in dealing with the dark side of this world. But that's the healing that I think Bear's talking about, and Susie, you and I have talked about this since the beginning, back when we first discovered each other, is that humanity has to have the tools and the means to heal themselves. They have to have the ability to be transparent and willing to undergo a process of transformation in order to heal the race itself. Because what has happened so far is that we have been corrupted through our generations going back again. I say, if I said 100,000 years, most people can't fathom that number. The existence of our civilization's memory isn't long enough to record the darkness that humanity's been in for so long. So to create communities to begin to expose the new technologies that are sitting there waiting to be developed, the free energy technology, and understand the fact that the most toxic aspect of our culture itself is money itself, which is a system of enslavement. That we eventually must remove money from the equation. We have to learn how to have an economy which does not recognize recent economic status. We all have to become peers in the earth and understand that if we don't share this world freely, and if we don't begin to develop what we have in terms of our own gifts and the gifts that are being given to us by this world, we won't destroy the world, we will destroy ourselves. This is the last generation that can live on the precipice. It's either jump or fly. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, you know, it's a really comforting thing when you realize from the day you take your first breath on planet Earth, you're engaged in the dying process.
Yes.
Right. So this really isn't about traditional views on words that have been twisted. We're talking about unrequited life and unrequited love. All about power and control, my friends. And hey, how do you guys think that people are going to deal with it? Now, everybody was used to the idea that money runs the show, and I'm not disagreeing. But the energetic currency, the trafficking, the harvesting, the looshing, the sacrificing, don't you think that that was worth more than the money to him the whole damn time? And the money was the shiny bauble?
Well, you know, this is a question that I brought up in a discussion last week with some friends. And I said, what is the motivation for a man who's a Catholic priest to do these rituals and to exploit children and to rise to the top levels of the religious pyramid, which is the Vatican Roman Catholic Church juggernaut? Because really, even though they live very nicely, they don't have families, they don't need to worry about a mortgage, they don't need to worry about a car. So what is the currency that is exchanged with these dark priests? What basically gets them off? What is it that they're looking for?
It's power and control.
It's power and control. It's juice.
Yes.
Basically the juice that lets you shoot up the scale to a place where you transcend the average mortal's comprehension. Now, I think those of us who have been in this community, certainly the people in this conversation today, understand we're living in the lower levels of the spectrum of human potential. And that, in fact, as I talked about earlier, coming in, we were identified, we understood that we had a mission in this generation, and that mission had to be hijacked by them, A, to harness the power, and B, to terminate the mission that was given to the soul to come in at this particular time. So that tells us that we possess the pure power, and that these vampires, these ghouls, these parasites, are really just bottom feeders, and that we don't actually need the system of controls that they put in place with all of their laws, even their laws that tell us we live a certain lifespan and then we have to die. These are programs. We've been programmed into believing the spells that have been cast. And so the most powerful thing I see that we do, especially using this medium, is to begin to break those spells and to cast them down and pull the scales off people's eyes so they can begin to see. You know, I've told people, if you're a Roman Catholic and you're still going to that bloody church, if you give them your money, if you go and you kneel before that bleeding altar in front of that bloody priest, you are as complicit with the horrors that they've committed as any of those priests
Right.
that have been made.
Take that bloody Jesus down off the cross. Daggum.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to do the impossible, and I think we've done so well.
So, just the
No. We have 13 minutes
I like the
before.
ridiculous myself.
I've missed being ridiculous with
Yes. Oh, we pull it off all the time, Sid.
you. I know, but it's not the same as doing it this way, and I've improved my
It's great fun,
skills.
isn't it?
Okay, now listen, serious, we got 13 minutes. Here's something I see happening that makes me very unhappy, and I'd like you guys' input on this. When we get down to that whole stupid script thing, and now they are flipping words and making the word Luciferic the same as the word Satanist, the same as the word whatever you know, however it goes, and it's like they flipped them. So could we close out on this dark magic story about how they flipped the words recently and what we can do to put that to an immediate rest. Because, you know, some people are going to just talk about Lucifer being the light bearer. They're going to bring Sophia into it. Bing, bang, boom. You got a religious war. And we got even more problems. So, does anybody have anything that they could bring to help people on that?
Like Randy was already saying, it's gotten to the point now where it's a matter of ripping the veils down completely so that they are exposed for who and what they really truly are, and kick them to the curb. Hopefully that can be done, like I said earlier, in a positive, least harmful way. Unfortunately, I believe wholeheartedly that there is a small group of these individuals which are going to be completely unwilling because they are completely incapable of stepping aside. They will not do it. So they're going to have to be removed by more forceful means. And how that ultimately plays out is anyone's guess at this point. I can speculate, but that's all it would be, is speculation on that. Ultimately, if it gets down to being down and dirty in the trenches, well, that's what people like me are on this planet for, as well as the other side of it. I carry a duality here. It's not just a healer, but it's not just all medicine. I've got years and years and years of the training and experience and know-how to be confrontational if the need so arises. My hope is that can be avoided. Unfortunately, I don't see that by the time this is over and done with, that our hands are not going to ultimately get dirty. And
Yeah, I agree.
And all I have to say is, why is it that a death cult has been around, been built around, you know, service and going off and being given orders to murder the elderly, the children, the women, everybody else? But hey, when it comes to what Medicine Bear just said, that people used to really dig about the movies, you know what I mean? Like, you know, a 007 kind of deal, or Jackie Chan, or, you know, whoever. I mean, Chuck Norris. I mean, we've got a
Well, we've all
long,
looked for. So here's the
a
thing.
long lineage.
That one of the programs running is that we need a hero on a white horse. We need the Bond. We need whatever, Batman, Thor, whoever. We are the heroes we've been waiting for, to use a horribly overused cliche. Because once a few people stand up, and a few more stand up, and a few more inside the power elite structure step down, because they're not going to get paid anymore, because the money system is failing, because they're not getting their bumps anymore, because the pedophile networks are being exposed. When organized crime, in concert with these high religious structures and intelligence agencies, can no longer operate as they have done on the streets of America for the last 100 years, that's good people stepping forward and becoming the heroes they need to be. The question is, do we have the fortitude to do this? We can evaporate this system without a shot fired when we assert our own moral directives.
Hey,
And a lot of that is intentionality put out in an occurrence and directed to bring down these bastards that have run this thing for so long.
Let me tell you how big of babies some instigators are out there. Okay, so let's say you take he's my buddy, John Lamb Lash, and the Clique of War Party. Now, there's no names. There is no, we're going to go get this particular person. they're focusing intent and letting Mother Nature clean out house on a particular jackass that gets pulled out of the ether, and then they have a system where the bobble drops or something, which would give credence to this form of magic actually working. But I hear so many crybabies talking about that, like they're doing something really bad, and I don't think any of this is doing something bad, immoral, or unethical. It is exactly what we the people need to do, is stand up and have faith in the process and get back to basic square root stuff.
I'm aware right now of groups of people that are doing very high spiritual work, pulling down the strongholds, as the Bible likes to call them.
Yeah.
Reconsecrating the ground, the land which has been defiled by the blood of the innocents, which screams out into heaven for justice, which is why our culture is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And liberating the souls of the ancients who were the rightful gods upon this world, who were enslaved eons ago.
Yes.
In other words, this is an angelic war. You want to talk about the wars, it's an angelic war. What we don't understand is that we have within us the power greater than the angels. It's the one thing in the Bible that I disagree with them as vehemently. We are not lower than angels. They fucking serve us.
That's exactly right. And
okay?
this is a battle of powers and principalities.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, with all that being said, I mean, my goodness, here again, whatever somebody knows that they resonate true in their heart, they damn well better stand up and do it at these final moments. And hey, one more thing, maybe, let's just go out on this. Does either of you guys know what this means? Because a great metaphysician said this was my symbol at one time. I mean, does that look like a rune or anything? What is this? And it was really specific that the marker didn't meet the marker on the circle. I saw him make a big deal about that. You can see where he started it and how he constructed it. But you know what? Maybe someday somebody's going to know what this is.
You've got the alpha sign there. I'm strongly suspecting that's alpha and omega.
Is it
some iteration as a sigil?
Is this the right way up, Randy, or should it be like that?
I don't think it matters.
Oh, it does.
I think you are the one who operates that symbol.
Well, I've never studied any of that.
What do you think, Ben?
I would agree. It's a sigil of sorts. As far as the proper placement of it, I believe that's left up to the individual for whom it was made for, and to how that is to be situated and used in its most appropriate form.
Well, all right. Now,
interesting is that just to tie it up with the last little bit, at least for me, I know I'm feeling it. I know you're feeling it. I definitely know Randy's feeling it. We're really just getting the kick out of this on a day-to-day basis, where it's almost like you wake up and your battery is almost on E before you even start the day.
Yeah.
And it's taking everything it's got just to get through. What I'm finding that helps is that when we do things like a broadcast like this energizes, this pumps me up. This gives me that connection to recharge my battery, so I'm not quite so worn down. So that when I'm done with this, I'm going to be able to go in and pull out organic food and start putting together and make a good wholesome meal to take in and feed the body and feed the soul. And that's what we need to do. The difference is that we've all been doing it from here and over here and over here. It's time we do and truly make that connection, solidify it, and stay connected. And that may mean some very personal barriers need to just be torn down. So be it. It's fine. That's what's required for us is us like-minded folk, us like-minded folk, are those of us whose souls are in alignment. Get off our duffs already and let's pull together. Let's just do it. And if that means that we all wind up in God knows this one little area of the world and we branch out from there, then that's what's going to happen. But this separation, this lone wolf stuff is that there's no more time for that. All of that has to go. It has to go away.
So here's the thing. The elites have been very good at one thing. They have known how to unify themselves to do the summonings. We're now going to become the masters of that too. That's what we have to do. Like I said, this is an angelic war. Whether you like that or whether that's your terminology, whatever you call them, it's a supernatural war.
And we have the relic mascot. Everybody always needs to realize that. The Sacred Scarab manifested right here on this incense burner in 2007. It is a bona fide fact. I wish somebody would come and tell me this isn't real. And hey, in the meantime, oh yeah, a lot of people know what this is, and we will put that to use one day. And oh, by the way, too, this is here's the legend with this, and one of your buddies gave it to me, Randy. This is the inside nut from one of those great big pine cone trees that are like, you know, huge, and then the pine cones fall and knock people out on their heads. They're so damn big, isn't it though? And and look,
nature exhibits it to us all over the place in the form and the type, so that we are reflected to remember that we need to initiate this.
Right, and all the seeds, energetically, even though they're not flying out right now, this is how they.
But that's what we're doing. In a sense,
Bingo.
we are doing what that has done in tossing off 1,000 seeds. Some will die, some will fall in unfertile soil, some will fall on the rocks and stones, and some will hit fertile ground and give fruit.
And they say that, like, when we go hang out wherever we're doing and consecrating space, this is set down, there is a prayer done, the land is regenerated. And that's why it was given to me. You know, I share. All right. Hey, we made it.
We made it. We did it under time, even though we were almost at half an hour. See, we got it all right. Bear, anything you want to say going out, my brother?
At this point, you know, I feel better about this interview than the other ones because I mean, yeah, that subject matter is important to touch base on, but it's so old that it's been beat down and talked about so much that for me moving forward, bringing that subject matter up, I'm okay with as long as that was then how we use the tools that were brought out by means of perpetration of horror experimentation to aid us today. Because everybody's been through the SRA, everybody's been through programs, all the talents that have been unlocked in each one of us, those are gifts and tools that were at one point being used for their purposes. There are tools. We were trained to use them. It's our time to use those tools for our betterment.
Your shirt.
That's pretty cool, I have to say.
Your shirt is magnificent as well. I just wanted to say that, Bear. And I looked at it earlier and gave Randy his compliment, but you know, I'm just a girl and a holistic stylist, so I had to make sure that I.
But you put the cosmic back into cosmetician.
I think so.
And you put a smile on my face. Sometimes I have no idea what you're talking about, but I know that energetically it's coded to reach exactly who it's supposed to reach.
I cannot
That's
believe.
the beauty.
I cannot believe. See, all right, this is what really gets me the most of it all. In my mind, I honestly really believe that everybody knows what I'm talking about that's involved in this story, because when the phenomena brings y'all in, I see it a completely different way, you know? And I'm the observer looking at this stuff, and like I told Bear, I do. I believe that this is all really what's already been done, and I'm just, you know, checking it out. It's really
Picking up
beautiful.
the pixie sticks.
It's
That's what
beautiful.
you do.
And I really appreciate you guys and the whole team at Off Planet Radio and all the people that is so important to us on social media. And I encourage people to not run like big fucking babies at this point, but to stand up and do what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. We've actually did a summoning, and we've put some energetic things out there that'll reverberate around, and some people will pick up the pixie sticks and continue walking. So, as I like to say always, thank you guys for coming on. Suze Pratt, Medicine Bear, tell people where they can find the Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge.
It's easy to find, www.rpmlmedicinelodge.org.
There you go. Suze,
Or
do you have a yeah. Do you have a website?
Hey, Randy.
Oh, yeah.
I sure the hell do. And I spent money on it and set it up my own self, but nobody
There you
goes
go.
there. It's Sue'sWorldEmporium.com. And you can also find me on YouTube at Suze Pratt or Sue's World Emporium. I have 2 channels, over 350 fucking live streams, and 300 and some odd YouTubes. Nobody
You're one of the
cares.
most prolific people I know on the internet.
Nobody
In such a short
cares.
time.
Nobody gives
Ever
a
since
shit.
I pulled you out of obscurity, you have just produced endless amounts of videos and really blessed me. All right, guys, that's it. We're backing out of here. The truth's out there. It's inside you. Go do something interesting.
Thanks, Medicine Bear. Thanks, Randy.
Thanks.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Love you guys too.
Bye.
Catch you on the back. Bye.
Okay.
All right.
That's a wrap. Thank you
Yeah.
for being the clock keeper. We actually did this. It was awesome.
I